Alright, for number 1, you have a square root function, so remember you have to know your reference points for each function. So you have to study your booklet. So I put the reference points for the square root function on the screen. And so now the transformations. Now h is -4 right here. K is 1, positive 1, and a is 2. So remember, a and k affect the y. B and h, but b in this case is 1 because there's nothing, you don't see a number in front of the x. So b is 1 and h is -4. So the x coordinates are going to change by x minus 4, and the y coordinates are going to change by 2y plus 1. Okay, so we're going to transform them now. So x minus 4 would give you, so 0 minus 4 would give you -4. And then 2 times 0 plus 1 is 1. And then 1 minus 4 is going to be -3. And then 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. And then 4 minus 4 is 0. And 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So these are the transformed points. Okay, so now we're going to plot the points. So -4, 1, -3, 3, and 0, 5. And remember, this is -4, 1 is where the function starts. That's where you have the dot, and it goes towards 0, 5, and there's an arrow at 0, past 0, 5. For number 2, we have a cubic function. So again, you see the points, the reference points for a cubic function right there. Let's see what else we have. We have h is positive 1, and that's the only parameter that will affect this function, the h. So that means that we're going to add 1 to the x's. The y's will stay the same. So you get 0, -1, 1, 0, and 2, 1. Okay, and then we're going to graph this. So 0, -1, 1, 0, and 2, 1. Now remember, don't confuse this with the cube root. The cube function goes up and goes towards the top and towards the bottom. So when you connect your points from the inflection point, you go up, and then inflection point, you come down. So number 3 is a cube root function. It has the same reference points as the cubic function, except this might help if you add the 8 to. It might help you. It'll help you know how to graph this one, because they have the same reference points. So look at number 2, number 3, same exact reference. The 3 initial reference points are the same. So now for this one, we have the b is 1/2, the k is -5. So b affects the x, but remember, it's a reciprocal, so it's not. We're going to multiply the x by 2. And then the k is -5, that affects the y, so we're going to subtract 5 from the y's. So for this transformation, it's 2x, and then this one, y minus 5. So you change the points, transform them, -2, -1 minus 5 is -6, and then 2 times 0 is 0, 0 minus 5 is -5. And then 2 times 1 is 2, and then 1 minus 5 is -4. Now this last one we're not going to graph, but just so you can see the direction of where the graph is going. So 16, and then 2 minus 5 is, -3. Okay, so we're not going to graph this point right here. But again, it's just going to help us get the direction right. Okay, so -2, -6, 0, -5, and 2, -4. Okay, so I've got 16, -3, but I'm not going to graph it. I just know that 16, -3 is going to be over here somewhere, right? So that's all I need to know. With that information, I know that instead of connecting the points this way, like the cubic function, I'm going to connect them this way. Okay, that's why this point right here is important, especially if you still have trouble telling this apart from this. Okay, so let's go ahead and connect. So from the inflection point it goes towards the right, and then from here it's going to go down to the left like that. So there's a graph of the cube root function. Okay, so for number 4, I've got h is 4 and k is 1. A and b are both 1. So what that means is that my x is going to be increased by 4 and my y's are going to increase by 1. So we transform the points and we get 4 minus 1, 3, 1 minus 1, 0, 4 plus 0, 4, 1 plus 0, 1, 4 plus 1, 5, and then 1 plus 1, 2. Okay, now we'll connect the points, or we draw the graph. Alright, so 3, 0, 4, 1, and 5, 2. So this is a cubic function, so this one goes from the inflection point, we graph it up, and from the inflection point this side goes down. Alright, for number 5 we have a is negative 1/2, h is negative 1, and k is negative 2. Okay, this is a quadratic, so that's why I have the reference points that you see here. These are reference points. I could add a couple more. I mean, these 3 are enough, but if you wanted to add another point, you could say 2, 4, because 2 squared is 4, and negative 2, 4. I'll just add that 2, 4, but because we know the graph is symmetric with respect to the line, the line that goes through the vertex. So once we get these 3, actually these 4, I can draw the point that's symmetric across the line. What is it? X equal whatever, x equal negative 1. You'll see. So anyway, a is negative 1/2, and we're subtracting 2, and then h is negative 1. So the x's are only going to be subtracted by 1, or we're going to subtract 1 from the x's. And for the y's, we're going to multiply by negative 1/2, and then subtract 2. Okay, that's the y right there. So we're going to transform those points. Okay, so negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. Negative 1/2 times 1, I'm going on to the y now, times 1 is negative 1/2, minus 2 is negative 2.5. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. 0 times negative 1/2 is 0, minus 2 is negative 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. And then we have 1, negative 2.5, right? Because it's negative 1/2 times 1. And let me just add the 4th point. 2 minus 1 is 1. And then 4 times negative 2, negative 1/2 is negative 2. Minus 2 is negative 4. Okay, so we're going to graph it now. Alright, so the points, negative 2, negative 2.5. So that would be about here. Negative 1, negative 2. 0, negative 2.5. And then 1, negative 4. So as I was saying earlier, we know that the function, the quadratic, is symmetric about this line right here, about x equals negative 1. That's the line of symmetry. So that means that on negative 3, it's also going to be negative 4. Without even calculating it, you know that that's the case. So you connect your points and go this side, and there's the graph. Okay, so for number 6, they're asking you to find vertex and x-intercepts, or intercept. So you can see from the equation that b is 0, because there's no x term. So that would be, and you know the formula is x equals negative b over 2a. Well, if b is 0, then x is 0, right? 0 over any number is 0. And so that means that y is negative 7. Okay, you could also look at this as being written in vertex form, where the h is 0 because there's nothing there after the x inside parentheses, and the k is -7. So you get the same answer. You could look at it in that respect too and get the same thing, right? 0, -7 is your vertex. Now think about it. 0, -7 is the vertex, right? So it's like down here somewhere. And it's opening down. How do I know that? Because of the negative in front of the 16. So then with that in mind, you know that this graph will never, ever, ever, ever cross the x-axis. So for x-intercept, you're going to say none. Okay, so number 7, again, they want the vertex and the x-intercepts. So the vertex, negative b over 2 times a, that gives you -2 over 2, which is -1. And then for the y, we find f of -1. That's your y coordinate. So that's going to be -1 squared plus 2 times -1 plus 2. So 2, this gives you -2 plus 2, that's 0. So the -1 squared is 1. So the vertex is -1, 1. Now think about where that one is. So -1, 1 is here, right? And this parabola opens up. So for x-intercept, again, you're going to have none. Okay, so number 8, same question. They want the vertex. Different question obviously, but they want the same thing. They want vertex and any x-intercepts. So the x is -b over 2 times a, which is -4. And the y coordinate of the vertex, you replace the x with -4. So negative, and then plus 12. So that gives me 16 minus 32 plus 12. So -16, so that gives you -4. So the vertex is -4, -4, okay? So this one will have some x-intercepts. Just if you think of the location of the vertex is right here somewhere, and it's going to open up, so it will have some x-intercepts, okay? It'll have 2 of them. So how do we find it? You could you set the equation or the f of x equal to 0, and then you solve for x. That's how you find the x-intercepts. You set the y equal to 0. And this one, factors. So you would write it as x plus factors of 12 that add up to 8 are 6 and 2. So that means that the x-intercepts are -6 and -2.